Hey everybody, and welcome to the Foundation First Fitness Show with Bob Owen. Today is episode 38 of this show, and I'm actually really impressed that I actually got to 38. I didn't really think I was going to actually pass 20, and well, here we are, rocking it hard at 38. So what I want to do is I want to go over overhead pressing. Overhead pressing has been kind of something that I really wanted to talk about. I was just trying to, put it all together, put all the pieces together, and kind of line it up with what I'm doing over on my Move Better Monday segment, which is something you can catch on YouTube. So for those of you who are listening to this on the podcast, if you head over to my channel, Bob Owen, just type that in the search bar and you'll be able to find my channel. I have a Move Better Monday segment, and I'm kind of going over a lot of what we're doing today and a little bit more practical stuff. So stuff that you can actually implement yourself and things you can do to kind of improve your ability to press overhead. So definitely head over there and check that out. And subscribe while you're there or whatever. Today, I really wanted to talk about some of the things that are going to help you, kind of more of the global things that you should be paying attention to and reasons why you might be struggling to press overhead, and kind of give you some tips on what to do to kind of help that along and, more or less improve your ability to press weight over your head. It doesn't have to be crazy amounts of weight. So this isn't something that needs to be someone who's, trying to be like Hercules and lift the car over their head. You're basically just trying to lift anything over your head. You're still going to want to maintain a certain amount of these really important factors, and you want to make sure that they are all kind of in line and doing the right thing so that you're able to actually lift that weight, whatever that may be. Overhead lifting and lifting weight over your head is actually very functional. It's something that we do a lot throughout our day, and one of the major reasons for injury of the shoulder in the elder population is coming directly from the ability or the inability to be able to properly press overhead. And this is actually starting to really pick up in the younger population as well. A lot of us are not able to press overhead, and we're struggling with that, and we end up injuring our shoulders. So you want to make sure that you're able to maintain that functional ability as much as possible. The other thing you might really be into is if you're an athlete and you deal with overhead component to your sport. So whether you're a CrossFitter and you're trying to press weight over your head, you're a volleyball player, so your arms are often right over your head. You want to be able to have some kind of structural stability in that shoulder, and overhead pressing is going to really help with that. So there's a couple of things that you really want to pay attention to when you are pressing overhead. And the three biggest problems or complaints I usually get from clients or athletes that have come in and spoken with me about overhead pressing or shoulder issues or some kind of combination of those two is, one, they generally feel a little bit of pressure in their spine. And so basically when they're lifting their weight up overhead, once it starts getting a little bit heavy, they start noticing that their spine starts to compress a bit. They start feeling a little bit of pressure on that spine, some pinching pain. So that's one of the main things that I'm usually going to hear. The second one is that it's usually coming from someone who's unable to really ramp up that weight anymore. They feel like they've gotten through that first little chunk, and then all of a sudden now they're stuck, and they've basically been floating around that same weight regardless of what they've done. So there's a couple of things you might want to adjust that's actually going to help for that as well. And third is someone's watched you, someone's seeing you, and someone's noticing that your technique is just off. So whether your elbows are flailing out to the side or your arms are not actually coming straight up over your head, they're actually a little bit tilted in front of you, so you're kind of pushing up more on an angle, so like an incline press as opposed to a shoulder press and ending, arms vertical right over your head. So the couple of solutions are based on a couple of factors and three main areas that I'm going to be looking at depending on which person I'm dealing with, obviously. But for the majority of cases, these three components are going to be the three, probably going to make up about 90% of the cases I've ever dealt with someone that is dealing with any one of those three major problems. So feeling pressure in the spine, not able to lift up enough weight, or just noticing that their technique is just plain off, which could basically arise in any of those first two. The solution, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the core position, right? Core position is going to dictate where that weight is overhead. So essentially the core is like a major chunk of your entire structure. So if you would imagine, we take a big building and we take out a chunk of the middle and it starts being very flimsy in the middle, it's going to be really hard for us to put or stack excessive amounts of weight on the top without the whole thing toppling over, or is losing some structural rigidity and actually breaking apart that component that's a little bit weak, so that, if you would, core area of that building. So the same thing holds true for you. If you're trying to press weight over your head and your core is not stable, you're very likely going to be walking into a situation where you're not going to be able to control that weight from swaying around. And so what will happen is that is where a lot of individuals will feel that pinching in their spine. And so what will happen is they'll either not be able to lift it, or they'll feel that pinching because their body's trying to go and demand more from their structure, which is their spine. So they're going to try to compress and use the joints to kind of stabilize that section of your body so that you can keep the weight overhead. Now, you don't want to be doing that. So if you do feel pinching in your back, the first thing you want to do is understand whether your core is actually able to stabilize, and then work your way up from there. So what I would tell you is a great exercise to do for that would be something like a dead bug, and understanding that if you can actually put your legs out straight and cross pattern, basically press up with the other arm. And what that's going to do is, if you can understand a dead bug, if you don't know what that is, you can Google it. It's basically lying on your back, hands up in the air, feet up in the air, knees bent actually. And you're basically going to be dropping your right leg to touch the ground and left arm up to touch the ground above your head. So you're going to be going legs kick down, arm is coming up, and the other arm and the other leg are staying put. They don't move. So if you were able to do that, that's going to be one of the first places you're going to want to start. And what that's doing is that's allowing you to try to maintain a nice stable position of your core. So when you are doing that exercise, it's really vital to make sure that your hip and your core doesn't shift around. You don't want any bending. You don't want any adjusting of your position of your core. You want it to all really stay stable. That way, you're going to know that if you are trying to press over your head and you're not able to maintain that on the ground, when you go to press weight over your head, the exact same thing is going to be happening for sure. Your body's going to start arching back because you don't have that ability to control it. So you're going to be relying more on your spine. The second thing that could be happening is that your thoracic spine, so your upper portion of your spine, so basically from about the rib cage, bottom of the rib cage area, up to about your collarbone area, anything in that area on your back, basically on your spine, could be limited in movement. So what I mean by that is, because we spend a lot of time sitting at our desk, rounded over at the shoulders and hunched over, we lose the ability to extend back and get a nice straight spine. So if we can't extend at the back, at the upper back, what we're going to be doing is going to get it from the lower back. So we're going to be hunched forward here, extending at the lower back, and that's going to cause pinching at the back. Now, if we try to avoid the pinching at the back when we round forward, what we're going to do is we're actually going to run into an inability to get our arms straight over our head, because we can't bring it back any further because we don't have that ability of extending the back and staying nice and tall and getting into that nice posture. So if you can understand, hopefully you can follow what I'm saying, is essentially you've got to be able to pull your spine out of that tight position. So one of the ways to do that is to do some kind of mobility drill, or essentially some kind of foam rolling or some tissue release along the upper spine, so that you can create some extension, or basically some straightening of that thoracic spine to that upper back portion. You can do this with a foam roller. So you could put a foam roller on the ground, so it's going, let's say it's going horizontally, you're going vertically. And what you're doing, you're basically lying perpendicular over it. I don't want to say perpendicular because you never know if someone actually remembered that term. But basically, you're going to cross that roller, and what you're going to do is you're going to basically just rock back over it and gradually bring it up your spine, so that you're constantly rocking over it. Now, I want to make a little point here. Rocking and rolling over your spine is not exactly for everybody. Some people may notice a little bit more tension. You may create more issues if you do that. So I wouldn't recommend everyone do it. It is an option, but I would definitely get yourself checked out. If you are going to do that, before you do that, make sure that you're getting checked out by either a therapist that's going to be able to tell you if it's good, or your strength coach that might be there that's going to tell you if you are able to do it or not. So I wouldn't just jump into it, because you may end up hurting yourself more if you have a rotated vertebrae, if you have some issues or some problems going on there. This is not for everyone. This is for a select number of people. If you are just looking to maybe just kind of release that tissue, what you can do is you can take a lacrosse ball and you're going to use some tape and basically tape 2 lacrosse balls together. And what that's going to create is basically like a peanut kind of structure, and your spine is going to fit right in between those 2 balls. And what you're going to do is just roll this up and down your back by putting your back up against the wall and just kind of half squatting and rolling your back. So that's going to help kind of release a little bit of that tension there. And then you can do some Buddha exercises where you're basically crossing your legs, reaching overhead, getting some mobility work for that spine to kind of extend. The third thing you're going to want to do is check to see if your shoulder and basically your shoulder blades, so that kind of triangular bone that sits on both sides of your spine, you're going to want to make sure that that bone is traveling and rolling around and moving up and down and gliding and translating really well on your back. If there's any limitation, or if there's any lack of movement, or if there's any misfiring or poor movement or poor glide or over translation or inability to move, anything in that respect will cause you to not be able to lift overhead because your body is not in a position to be stable. So your brain is almost going to cut that signal off and stop you from going into that area because it knows that if you do it, you're going to get hurt. So something like a shoulder tendonitis can come from a lot of pressing in the wrong position and excessively pressing in the wrong position for that matter. So what you need to do is, before you start really jumping into that pressing overhead, you want to make sure that you get a nice amount of movement, amount of spine movement. So what you can do for that to make sure that you are pressing overhead properly is do almost like a wall slide. So essentially you're going to take your hands, the outside of your hands here, you're going to press it up against the wall. So you're going to be facing the wall. You're going to be a couple of inches off the wall. And from here, what you're going to do is maintain pressure, and at the same time, maintain that core pressure, maintain that spine position. And from here, you're pressing straight up over your head and then coming back down. And you're applying a little bit of pressure forward. And what that's going to do is that's going to help kind of lock in those muscles of the shoulder blade. So it allows it, not of the shoulder blade, around the shoulder blade, that are going to allow it to glide smoothly as you bring your arms straight up and straight down. That's one of the exercises you can do. And obviously what you can do is grab an elastic, basically a nice tubing elastic in front of you, straight arms, and allow yourself to open those arms and pull your arms away from each other. So your body's going to look like a T, which is why we call it an elastic T, because your body looks like a T at the end of it. And you're controlling it. Make sure to slowly control it back on the way back in front of you. So if you notice, what I did was I started with core. So I started from the ground, moved up to my spine, and moved out to my shoulder, so that I can make sure that if you're covering all 3 of those points and you're really just trying to sweep the whole thing and not kind of almost educatedly guess, if you would, which area is your problem, and you just kind of sweep it, you could really sweep the whole thing very quickly. I mean, you doing a dead bug and a Buddha and some extensions overroll, really that's not going to take all that much time up. You know, that might add about 3 to 5 minutes to your entire warm-up routine or your entire preparation and activation routine that's going to allow you to press overhead. So why not just do it? You're going to need it anyway. So I would recommend going from step 1, step 2 to step 3, running through it every single day, seeing if that helps. Again, this may not help everyone. This doesn't mean that everyone's dealing with one of these 3 issues. These are just the more likely causes. But if you are struggling with any of that overhead pressing and you have tried these 3 and you're not finding any resolution to it, definitely get that checked out. And all it could be is that, you know, one of the exercises that I recommended for you might just be a little bit too advanced, or it might be too easy and you might need a little bit more. So it really depends from person to person. I wouldn't freak out if one of these 3 solutions doesn't work, because a little tweak in any one of these 3 can change the whole game for you. So try them out and definitely let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear back from you guys on this, because I think overhead pressing is one of those things that a lot of individuals are struggling with and could easily make up a lot of ground and make some drastic improvements, take some really big strides by simply implementing these 3 things. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. If you are watching this on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you guys are watching this on the listening to this on the podcast, thank you very much. I hope you have a great rest of your day to all of you. And I will see you guys next time. And until that next time, keep building that foundation. Take care, guys.